Take what resonates, leave the rest. This is an invitation, not a doctrine, and trust your own inner knowing above all else. It's a lot to try and pull together information. I'm sure, this is just layer upon layer. So much disinformation, so much rewritten history. So it takes a lot to try and get to the bottom of it all. So I just want to share where my material really comes from. Lots of downloads growing up and just my own urgencies and passions to get to the bottom of things, particularly in the context of what's going on astrologically, how that relates to our DNA and the planetary grid network, and then also the Mars recruitment, that experience that I had being pre-targeted before I was born. That's what I was told from Project Pegasus, and that's what they were talking about before I came in. And it wasn't to be a part of the SSP, it was to be a permanent colonist on Mars. So anyway, I also draw from whistleblower testimony, suppressed history, esoteric research, and lived experience. The Eisenhower connection, I'm a great-granddaughter, as you know. Our family were Swiss-German Mennonites, originally Eisenhower meaning iron hewer, who emigrated to Pennsylvania carrying a heritage rooted in pacifism, conscience, and a deep personal relationship with God. This lineage holds both the weight of worldly power and the memory of those who refused it. I believe I incarnated into this family by soul agreement, and that was part of the pre-targeting. There's a lot of information about that, but I don't need to go into that. And my presence during his administration from a galactic level, and just being really insane and being like, hey, I'll come in and be born into that family. So I'm going to start here. Can I take this off? I'm going to start here to really look at the chronology of events, starting with Maria Orsic and the Vril Society. Early 1920s, Maria Orsic, a German medium, received technical blueprints via channeling from Aldebaran ETs, schematics for disc-shaped craft. The Vril Society formed around this contact, the occult bridge between ET intelligence and the Navy breakaway program. Two parallel streams of advanced technology, Vril channeling and Tesla's warp patent, converge in 1929. So the time between 1927 and 1929, Tesla and the breakaway occult order. So the breakaway occult order, I think we can all imagine what that might be, beginning with an N. And I've become so careful of what I say, where I can say it, and what's going to happen if I do. But the Nazis. So 1927, Tesla patents the first complete warp engine, erased from public record in 1956. In 1929, technology acquired by a breakaway occult faction for $2 million after the U.S. government repeatedly refused to purchase it. So they purchased it from Tesla. Achieving warp capability drew the attention of the Intergalactic Federation. Draco Empire and Grey factions moved in to make contact. Tesla died January 7th, 1943, alone, in debt, discredited. The FBI seized his papers the next day, classified and never fully released. And basically they built an empire out of his technology. And even if he sold it, and how that all went about, who was to know what they were going to do with this technology? So what was the astrology around 1929? Well, Pluto was in the sign of Cancer, and when we look at inversions of the astrology, we can begin to understand the times. For every sign and outer planet and planetary configuration, there's a weaponized and psyop kind of version or inversion that we are bombarded with in order to take us into the same energies but in a reversal, in order to keep us on a path of digression and disempowerment, so that we're constantly creating loosh for those beings that want to feed on us. That's how they keep this inner battle and outer battle going. Inner battle for us, because we can only really win the war from within. Much larger picture battle that plays out all these storylines that we accept as the human condition. Not realizing that a lot of world wars were created in order to take many humans and abduct them with all these missing numbers that people just assume died in war. So Pluto in Cancer, the collective fear weaponized, Ancestral memory inverted into nationalism and racial purity. Pluto in Cancer. Cancer has to do with home, family, mother. Pluto's all about transformation. Saturn in Sagittarius. Higher truth suppressed. Wisdom replaced with occult dogma and propaganda. And then Uranus in Aries. Radical intervention hijacked. Tesla's genius weaponizing to break away war technology. So all of these planetary energies have a higher octave. So every planetary alignment that we're experiencing right now have a growth period for us to advance ourselves and evolve. And this is the thing with the system. It creates psyops and false flags to leverage those energies to capture us into its web. And then all of a sudden, yeah, we're in this experience that is more on an artificial timeline trajectory than the true path that we could be living. But the thing is, it's all there as a reminder and a catalyst, if we can see it from that larger perspective. So the Hannibal Fleet, Nordic Contact, and Galactic Agreements in 1929. Tesla's warp technology acquired by the breakaway occult faction in 1929. The formal contact made with Nordic extraterrestrials and a secret exchange of knowledge that developed into the Hannibal 1, 2, and 3 disc-shaped craft for off-world travel and led to the establishment of New Berlin beneath Antarctica and the rise of hidden breakaway civilizations beyond national control. So the formal contact had to be somewhat hidden because the Muhammad Accord, the Dracos and the Nordics were in a war that ended 500 years ago, and the Muhammad Accord meant that the Nordics could not intervene and help humanity. So the Nordics and New Berlin and the Federation. Acquisition of Tesla's warp technology in 1929 signaled to interstellar civilizations that a threshold had been crossed, triggering formal contact with Nordic extraterrestrials and awareness of the Galactic Federation. Nordics, bound by the Muhammad Accord, could not openly assist humanity. New Berlin, built beneath Antarctica using Nordic-driven technologies, what took place. Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump was turned back by advanced craft. Nordics held no seat in the Draco-led Intergalactic Federation, but they joined, supposedly, the Earth Alliance only after the Outer Barrier was established December 14, 2014. So it doesn't mean they didn't have some sort of position. We hear so much about them and other people that have worked with them, but this New Berlin and whatever was going on there seemed to be another sort of breakaway thing. So from Warp 1 to off-world bases. Bases were established on the Moon and Mars using Tesla-acquired warp technology. Mining operations, research facilities, and habitation zones built off-world. Staffed through MyLab recruitment and 20 and back programs. Hidden from every sitting president and outside all democratic oversight. So the Grada Treaty and the Gray Agreements, 1929 to 1945. So we usually, or if anybody's researching this, you're going to run into the date 1954, and you're going to hear that Eisenhower signed these treaties. And I know part of my agreements coming into this family was to get to the truth. Not as a truth I picked out, like, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to pick out this particular one. It was more like, okay, where's the truth? And when I was a speaker starting in 2010, I was bringing this to light. I was wanting it all to come out with an open mind that maybe he did in 1954 sign treaties. It's nothing I've ever run away from or shied away from. But as time went on and synchronicities were falling into place, I met some very, very significant and very credible people that helped me to understand this, and it made a ton of sense. Even James Cadwell has exposed some of this and the earlier agreements. So Dan Cooper, Alex Collier, many different individuals have helped to connect a lot of these dots. So the Grada Treaty and the Gray Agreements, actually James mentioned in some of his articles, or maybe even in his book, that the Grada Treaty is renewed every 10 years. So this actually makes sense to how this is all progressing here and what I'm going to share. So 1929, first formal agreements made with the Gray extraterrestrials, backed by the Draco Empire. Greys received access to human subjects for experimentation in exchange for advanced technology. Nordics shared technology through back channels, bound by the Muhammad Accord from openly assisting the larger humanity. The Draco-Gray bloc operated as the dominant force, and the Greys vote with the Draco in the Intergalactic Federation. Greys violated the agreements, taking far more subjects than agreed. So we tend to think that they broke a treaty in 1954. In actual fact, they took far more than what was agreed upon a long time ago, very early on. So wars, depression, and fascism was engineered to keep humanity distracted while programs advanced. The Draco Empire rules hundreds of thousands of species across millions of planets and thousands of galaxies, leading an intergalactic federation of 60 spacefaring species. The Greys hold a seat and vote with the Draco bloc. And again, there's many species of Greys, there's many different types of beings. I'm only focusing on the particular ones that are behind treaties and agreements and exchange of humans for technology in this particular presentation. So what sometimes surprises people is this bit of information about Churchill, Aleister Crowley, and the Grey Alien Agreements. And this information comes from Lisa Renee from energeticsynthesis.com. And anybody who follows Lisa, you know she has an incredible knowledge base and guardian perspective and so much information that has connected a lot of dots. So when I came across this many, many years ago, it just really fits into a potential renewal later on, or the next phase of all of this, right? So Grey Agreements of 1929 appear to have expanded significantly through the 1930s and 1940s. The Crowley-Churchill-Hitler triangle said to have deepened the ET agreements. Technology trade led to human experiments, mind control, psychotronics, and time travel. Churchill allegedly allowed 5,000 children to be abducted from poor areas. Greys took roughly 10 times that amount. The situation spiraled out of control. Strategy, continual world wars to divide, drain, and control humanity. So you can see that's from Ascension Glossary. So the human barter agreements. Treaties involved bartering planetary resources and human beings. Also supplied labor for work camps and secret space programs. Governments agreed to supply adults and children for abduction, forced breeding, and genetic experimentation. In return, advanced off-planet technologies, spacecraft blueprints, and militarized weaponry, zero-point energy. So, and this kind of goes into the much, much larger picture when it comes to the archons and the archonic deception strategy. Because when you really trace this back, this goes back thousands of years, like Penny was talking about. The Lyran Wars, the Orion Wars, stepping down into this lower harmonic universe, Tiamat explosion, landing in this lower harmonic universe, 7 root races, 5 cloister races, 7 plus 5 is 12, and just how the vulnerability of humans that were coming in, we were easily hijacked. The planetary grid network was already holding echoes of trauma through its nervous system. So it was very easy to install reversal grid technology to begin to create this whole, kind of system where we just come in with amnesia. I mean, there were these root races that we have memories of, a lot of us have memories of, Polaris, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Atlantis, and then the final Atlantis cataclysm really began this covert power structure. But of course, there's Avalon, and there's as it started to just kind of dwindle down, and the 12th of Day Dawn, which we've been talking about, and we're going to go see some sites connected to that. So anyway, the archons are a predatory species that feed on the loosh of humanity. They require our consent, our ignorance, and our division to maintain control over this realm. And this is what surprised me, because most people sort of know that, but it's wild to see how much drama and conflict is constantly generated, and how it's just very much seated and triggered in social media. And that's what paid trolls are for. Dan Cooper said they spend billions of dollars to shut down a lot of our missions, and billions of dollars to create a false PSYOP targeting Eisenhower and things that took place on this timeline. To this day, they spend a ton of money. So, their troll academy, which I always tell them it sucks. Like, your trolls really aren't very good. They're not. You can train them a little better because it's like kind of hilarious. Well, I don't want to encourage them to train them better, but I mean, we can see how the PSYOPs and false flags are just so obvious. You know, you can tell a fake account. You can just tell people are just trying to push your buttons, try and like get that loose, because literally this is how they feed. So, and they're not just doing it to be jerks. This is their food source, because they compromise their DNA on purpose to maintain this control system. So when we look at 10-strand DNA, the 10th gate, the Iran-Iraqi gate, when we look at the 11th gate, Sons of Belial, you got the Black Sons of the Draco, the Sons of Belial, Anunnaki factions, and you see where these gateways and Stargate, well, the Stargates exist. This is where this infiltration and reversal grid technology was placed. They compromised their DNA to 11-strand and 10-strand, and compromise the planetary grid network so that we would never be able to ascend and reclaim that 12th strand or connect into the 13th. And when we look at those higher strands, we're looking at the avatar consciousness, what we were able to hold when we were in Lyra. The full capacity of humans is constantly impacted by not just the dark technology, but the social engineering. The thing is, when we break down the social engineering, we break down the weaponry. The weaponry is used in tandem. If the weaponry was enough, they wouldn't waste their time with all the social engineering. They'd be like, oh, we're just like getting them with all the bioweapons and 5G and frequency weaponization. They need us to buy into the bait and consent to the programs for the dark tech to even work. The dark tech just helps it kind of get in there, and it allows that exposure or that like link and that sort of addiction into all of that. So anyway, endless cycles of crisis and conflict, intensification of authoritarian control, compartmentalization of information, and uneven distribution of militarized technology. So the astrology of World War II, Pluto and Leo, rise of authoritarian power, solar Christ template inverted into ego and false kingship. Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which we had around COVID time, and add Jupiter to the mix, 2019-2020, which was a major growth period for humanity. Boom, a different kind of war on humanity. Saturn-Pluto conjunct is very, very powerful. Anyway, the CIA founded during that time, Roswell crash, and karmic restructuring seized to cement the secrecy state. So look at what happened recently with the Saturn conjunct Pluto, which represents a major growth period to transform our way out of the control matrix and systems to get to the higher octave of what Saturn represents, which is self-mastery and being a teacher. So all the planetary alignments are designed to bring us back to source. Just like when we injure ourselves, our body naturally knows how to heal. And no matter what we go through, no matter what form of injury, whether it's on our life path, whether it's in our physical body, there's a natural reaction that takes place to bring about healing. So on a much larger picture level, that's what's happening in the cosmos, that the planetary alignments hold the intelligence of knowing how to return the humans that exist upon her body and the body of this planet back into alignment, back into healing, back into its truest potential. But when you're talking about a major control system that literally is keeping the mother energy out of her own body to be able to hold her vessel in a grounded way, that's why we've had so many dark cycles of history. And the dark mother reversal grids, the mothers of darkness, the whole infrastructure of the Illuminati is basically to keep us in reversal, to make it inhospitable for the mother energy to reclaim her body. And so what we've been dealing with the cycles and the precession of the equinoxes is for the geophysics of the planet to reach a certain point where the mother energy can return and reclaim her body. So they rigged the whole system to keep that from happening. They are literally, or they have literally done everything possible to rig the system to keep that out, to keep us out of our bodies, or to be so compartmentalized in our own egos, to be so ungrounded, and just in sort of a nervous system distress all the time, to not fully anchor in. And if we do anchor in, there's usually something that derails us, or some sort of news event, or some sort of thing that happens that just puts us in a state of distress again. And that's why psyops and false flags are designed to keep us in a constant trauma loop. And then we get addicted to the trauma loops, and then we just create our own trauma loops, because that's just how our nervous system becomes wired after a while. So anyway, these things were happening, Neptune and Libra, so peace cloaked hidden agendas, divine justice dissolved into false treaties and controlled opposition. So all these planetary alignments, we have been existing as a humanity in its inverted form. So the 1947, the hidden convergence. 1 year, 4 events, a new architecture of secrecy takes shape. Roswell, Craft and bodies were reportedly recovered, and secrecy around reverse engineering begins. The modern UFO cover-up was born. Operation High Jump. Admiral Byrd's Antarctic expedition allegedly encountered advanced craft and was turned back, confirming New Berlin's existence to those in the know. Operation Paperclip in the CIA. Over 1,600 Nazi scientists were absorbed into American black programs, and the CIA was formally established, institutionalizing the secrecy state, and that MJ-12 would operate within. So the breakaway space programs, 1929 to 1940s, Foundation era, Tesla tech acquired, New Berlin built, early ET agreements made. Post 1947, Roswell crash, Operation Paperclip, accelerate, reverse engineering, and black program funding. Post 1952, after the ICC Nazi Draco surrender, programs formalize and expand rapidly. So I'm going to get into that 1952 in just a minute. Known programs, Solar Warden, Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, Dark Fleet, Nachtwaften, Lunar Operations Command, Mars Colony Corporation, and there's more. Off-world bases on the Moon and Mars, said to have been established as early as the 1930s and 40s using Tesla's warp technology. Personnel recruited via MyLab programs or 20 and back contracts, 20 years of service, age regression, memory wipe on return, operating behind any democratic oversight, technology and knowledge withheld from humanity. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, the general who wanted to heal. So lots of psyops, lots of false flags. I get hit with them probably twice a day by anybody and everyone that thinks that they happen. And again, I had an open mind to maybe that they did. But then it really helps to research. I'd like to remind people and to actually look at the records. So he was accused of purposely putting to death all these Germans. And you can see in the beginning, we're German Swiss, he's German, that it was a genocide and that it was intentional. So I've climbed down that rabbit hole a bunch of times. Was recently in Germany, did a presentation on it, and was very warmly received, which meant so much to me and to them. Anyway, he defended human dignity even for enemies. He pushed back against punitive post-war measures. So yes, it was very harsh in the beginning, but it was harsh for everyone, absolutely. And he helped shape the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe and Germany through investment and dignity rather than punishment. So what he inherited. By the time Eisenhower took office in January 1953, the breakaway civilization was already 20 years old. The periodic agreements had been made, the programs were running, the 1952 surrender was already signed. He walked into a world that had already been sold without his knowledge or consent. So I really appreciate, before the Dracos, before the Greys, before those agreements, before Hitler, Crowley, Churchill, what Germany was attempting to do, what Hitler was attempting to do. But unfortunately, like so many things, it got hijacked and infiltrated and was really getting out of control. Because we're not dealing with what's going on the ground surface on a human level. We're dealing with advanced technology. We're dealing with a much larger picture on a multidimensional, multi-species level that has roots in our ancient history that we have genetic connection with as well. Because we're born and we're just like this limited human that doesn't realize how much more we're made of. And this is what's going to win the war. This is why this is such a powerful period, and they do everything under the sun to keep us from activating dormant DNA. So Dan Cooper, who I've gotten to know over the last 4 or 5 years. Dan Cooper, he's an expert researcher and Earth Alliance senior advisor. He's given me a lot of information voluntarily, not looking for anything in return. He works directly with the Guardians, and the Guardians won't let him take any money for what he does. His background is 20 years legal research expertise, USAF Space Command Tech Sergeant, second class, 20 and back stint with Dark Fleet, and the knowledge sources that he gets his information from: 2 Nazi SS commanding officers, personal participation accounts of Battle of DC, understanding of 5th to 8th fundamental force of nature. He's a physicist, and his bio is so huge. So just to save time, I just kept it kind of short, and there's so much that I left out. But he also is considered a Kensei, a sword duelist in the SSP, and he won the duels. He never maimed anybody, never killed anybody, so he was shown a lot of respect and given immunities and never signed an NDA. So, and he was protected, he's been very protected throughout all of this. So he told me about the U.S. surrender and legal authority transfer July 19th, 1952. And this is an event that you all might have heard of, the UFOs flying over the Capitol in 1952. So July 19th, 1952, 600 operatives from 36 spacecraft forced Congress to surrender to the interplanetary corporate Nazi Draco alliance. Treaty powers transferred to MJ-12 before Eisenhower ever took office. July 26 to 28, 1952, a second flyover happened. The Indianapolis News reported hundreds in-state see flying saucers. January 20th, 1953, Ike assumed the presidency with no treaty powers. MJ-12 held sole legal authority to sign agreements with ET species. We're talking 30 levels above the president. There's a lot to say about all that. But what followed was MKUltra CAI mind control programs. Even Mengele changed his name to Dr. Green and was on the board at the Stanford Research Institute. So Montauk Project, time travel, psychic warfare, mind control, and a vast expansion of black programs funded by the new secrecy state. So this basically was a surrender, the craft from Antarctica. Commander Valiant Thor's warning, 1952. There's a book by Frank Stranges called Strangers at the Pentagon, but actually Val was communicating earlier than 1957. And it's very hard, I mean, if it wasn't for Dan Cooper, it'd be very hard to find out this information. And a lot of other information I've gotten are from people that you might have heard of, named Anonymous. Have you heard of the guy named Anonymous? Oh yeah, that guy. Exposed a lot on his deathbed. He couldn't expose it any earlier than that. And you hear about William Cooper and Phil Schneider, and the thing is, these are really well-intentioned whistleblowers that have shared a lot of truth, but they weren't given access to this sort of information. Everything was on a need-to-know basis as far as what information you would hear, and they're certainly not going to tell the ones that are working for them or building bases this kind of information. I mean, they're just not going to let anybody know this. So anyway, I'm talking about the 1952 unconditional surrender instrument. We thought we won the war. That's what's told in our history books. So this whole other thing's going on under our noses, these hidden programs, operations, SSP, and social engineering. Very obvious, the social engineering part. So in 1952, during Truman's presidency, Commander Balfour warned the United States about the Nordics. Most that we hear on the internet, or people that are sharing videos that are going viral about first contact and the Nordic warning about the Greys and then Eisenhower sided with the Greys. Well, this is what Dan Cooper said, and he's got really good sources, that in 1952, Balfour warned the United States about the Nordics, stating that they were aligned with the Nazis at that time. He also warned the U.S. about the Greys, who had active agreements with the Nazis. The Nazi-Grey exchange. The Greys provided the Nazis with advanced technology. In return, the Nazis delivered 100,000 U.S. citizens per year to the Greys. The specific technology exchanges will be detailed separately. But, so, that whole first contact, I think people are mixing up or they're trying to blend it in with when Balfour was warning about both. And basically, Balfour acted as an advisor since then, at that point, to Eisenhower and became a bridge to the Guardians. Balfour advised Eisenhower on defeating the ICC Draco alliance. Venusians operate under a deep code of nonviolence and reverence for life. He informed Ike about the Sphere Being Alliance and submitted his petition to the Guardians. And basically, Eisenhower said, is there anybody more powerful than the Federations? Because he had already began to understand. I mean, he was warned, and they were starting to really talk about this. Is there anybody more powerful than the Federations that can help assist humanity? And he said, the Guardians, the Sphere Beings. And the thing to me is this was inevitable. Ascension window period is inevitable. But like we know in our own lives, we have to invoke things. We have to make agreements with things, our higher self, a better life path, a healthy lifestyle. We have to make a stand in our lives to make that happen. So somebody had to come into the government sphere in order to make that happen there, because that's where so much infiltration had taken place. But to me, he was just a voice for all of us. And we declare that as well. Each and every one of us has to take a stand and declare that. So to do that in the government was a necessary place. And it was him, along with so many, that were in agreement with it too. And so many individuals that have been blackmailed, and so many individuals that have had their hands tied. It was a declaration that we will not allow ourselves to be hijacked as a human race. And he's one of many that have stood up in whatever capacity was necessary. And we do that no matter where we go and what we do. We do it with the land under our feet. We do it as we break down control systems by standing in our sovereignty and our truth. We do that in our own lives when we refuse to be hijacked and used and infiltrated. So, protected by the Guardians, Balfour was able to advise despite the Venusians' non-interference agreement. And in 1957, Eisenhower wanted to share Balfour's plan publicly, but he was blocked by the CIA, the Secretary of Defense, and the military chiefs, which is quoted from Frank Strange's book, Stranger at the Pentagon, and officials feared people might choose to follow him instead of them. So that was all shut down, but it didn't mean that the countermeasures went away. So Eisenhower, guardian of the timeline and secret resistance, he was forced to openly comply with the instrument of surrender, secretly built resistance. But he founded the White Hats. The first recruiters were U.S. generals and admirals from Texas. Reagan joined after the 1981 assassination attempt by the ICC Nazi-Draco alliance. He established the USMC Special Section, the most successful unit opposing the ICC Nazi-Draco alliance. He ordered a military invasion of the Dulce base, a direct combat inside the base. They lost that battle 30-1. That was in 1954, the same year he's blamed for signing a treaty. And he threatened to invade Area 51. Anonymous on his deathbed tells the whole story about that. Everything was out of control. MJ-12 was not reporting to him. So that doesn't sound like a guy that signed a treaty. If he had signed a treaty, I probably would have grown up with alien technology in the house or something. I don't know. So he appealed to this fear-being alliance to erect an 8th density barrier, which was finally established December 14, 2014, a year where a fake alien invasion was planned and all sorts of very dark things were planned. And it can only do so much because nobody's really saving us. These things are a natural process in the planetary system's own healing of itself to show their presence and to see, are we going to accept? Do we accept our higher self? Do we accept our relationship with Mother Earth? This was all, to me, an organic progression of the planetary system healing itself. But those stories move through us. This process of Mother Earth healing herself moves through us, as long as we live on her back. Or we are a part of the reversal grid energy and we are in this simulation. And that's not going to block ascension. We're just going to miss out on it because we're too busy being harvested and siphoned off in some other artificial timeline, eventually turning into like an EBE or a gray and then coming back and abducting ourselves, being like, so we have a chance to really learn from the larger picture of all this and to see why that occurs. Why does that even happen? And of course, not every gray is the same or has the same agenda or is coming from the same place on the timeline. You've got your P45s, P52s that Dan Burris has talked about. You've got Orions from ancient wars. You've got ones that are warning us. You have ones that are helping us. I mean, it's a whole hodgepodge of all sorts of different things. But the Earth Alliance is another thing Eisenhower set up. What is it? It's a coalition of military, intelligence, and civilian factions working covertly to dismantle the breakaway control structure, end the secret treaties, and return sovereignty and suppress technology to humanity. The Eisenhower seed was that Ike could not fight openly, but he planted the roots of a resistance that outlasted him. What began in secret became a global operation, growing in scope and coordination across decades. And he was briefed, supposedly, that a descendant would come in and help bring about the truth, because he knew that all this would be covered up. He knew that the tech that they had and the agenda was going to rewrite history and just make this very, very hard to access. And he was also briefed that a number of us were going to come in and work together. And that made him very happy to know, because one of my favorite quotes is, people want peace so bad that the governments had better get out of their way and let them have it. And we are that peace. So he was briefed that a bunch of us would come and work together and remind humanity of who they are and bring out this hidden history. And that's why it's teamwork. That's why every single one of us counts. Every soul that awakens is another part of the process of global liberation. It's not for a leader, it's not for a government, it's not for anything, except it mirroring what we're doing and showing us the success of our efforts. So the Grata Treaty, deception, and the smear campaign. The 1954 treaty was agreed upon between aliens and the NSA's ultra units. Alex Collier says that. These are units that a lot of the three-letter organizations don't even know exist. So when you have this level of compartmentalism and this top secret 30 levels above the president, this is a particular unit that many haven't ever heard of. So what are they going to do? They're going to hide. That's why they're called the shadow government. So what are they going to do in place of hiding? They're going to allow something to go viral, like disclosures just like ready to go and pop. Oh, here it is. Oh my gosh, look, it's going viral. Like, oh, it's time for disclosure. Blaming the guy who actually is trying to put an end to this, that set up what he did in his time. It's pretty brutal to carry that and have to wear that every day and push through that, because we know how powerful curses are and directing negative energy towards people. And think about all the people that have been recruited, my labs, taken, because of their gifts and abilities, and this is a major effort. Doesn't matter who we were born into, what situation we came into, we're here to crack it, we're here to rise above. And it doesn't, I think I just landed here to, bring this information out, but I'm even surprised, say he was the worst person on earth, why would you attack a relative? It just doesn't make any sense. But I know that it's not your everyday Joe. I know it's the trolls that they pay, the money that they put towards this effort to take a lot of us down, to stop us from what we're doing, to keep us from working together, to turn us against each other. So the NSA's Ultra Unit made agreements without Eisenhower's knowledge or consent. MJ-12 held the only legal authority to sign ET treaties, not the president. Blaming Eisenhower was deliberate, designed to bury his real legacy of resistance. Labeled a secret Soviet agent even, a smear from the very forces he opposed, and accused of starving German POWs, debunked by independent military and German historians. And the list is so long as far as the debunking. MILABs, military abductions and covert programs. I feel like they've set up that scapegoat to hide the MILAB abductions. So we don't even look, to 1929. We're seeing it as a new phenomenon. Cattle mutilations, people getting abducted. Because the ones that were abducted back in the 1930s and 40s were during wartime. That's why they created the wars, Dan Cooper's saying, so that they could take millions of people, so that they could blame it on war. What a great strategy, right? It's not a great strategy, but you know what I mean. Now it's like, okay, this abduction phenomenon must have started in 1954. We're not looking back further than that. A lot of people aren't, at least. So military abductions and covert programs. What are MILABs? Civilians taken at night, subjected to experiments or intelligence extraction, then returned with suppressed memories. The overlap with ET abductions. Controller factions co-opted genuine ET contact as a cover. And not all alien abductions were extraterrestrial. Breaking the silence. Exposing MILABs is essential to reclaiming human sovereignty and ending the hidden war on human consciousness. So, and then we got the tech we have to deal with, and we've been dealing with. The supercomputer and AI control system, psychological and emotional warfare. Media is weaponized to distract, divide, and manipulate public perception away from critical truths. The supercomputer system. Og Tellis, who some of you might be familiar with, who is a whistleblower, I believe he's SSP, describes a supercomputer sending waves of desires at precisely the right moment, coordinated with media, scalar events, weather, and biological cycles. And towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to talk about these biological cycles, how we're elemental beings, and how this dark weaponry that harvests and siphons us is where the geoengineering and the social engineering work hand in hand. If you don't have a socially engineered society, you're not going to have a geoengineered nature. We have to understand the relationship between how we're functioning, what the health of we hold as a humanity, and what nature is mirroring back. Because once we break down the weaponry, we're able to clear all of this. So, AI mapping and human awareness. AI has mapped an entire system designed to ensure humanity does not become aware of its true power. So Og Tellis. Media, mind control, and the divide and conquer agenda. Divide and conquer in action. Media is weaponized to pit people against each other by race, politics, religion, and class. Hidden forces seek polarity to keep humanity in perpetual conflict and unable to unify. Breaking free. Discernment is the antidote. When we see the manipulation, we withdraw our energy from it, and unity consciousness breaks the spell. Because we're not meant to do this alone, we're meant to do this together. But when we're weaponized against each other, we're living on a very surface, superficial level, and we're not really helping each other through the assaults that we're dealing with. We're too busy being a product of those assaults and those programs and those unresolved traumas. So the system is rigged for that very reason. The entire control architecture, divide and conquer, dependency, trauma loops, inversion, is designed to keep us cycling. The exit is not a protest, it is a withdrawal of consent and a return to self. Engineered fragmentation. Inversion, division, dependency, and trauma loops are not accidents. They are engineered to keep consciousness fragmented and feeding the machine. PSYOPs and creative capture. Every threat, fear narrative, and PSYOP is designed to capture your creative imagination so that you energize and enable the very things you don't want. Where attention goes, energy flows. But this is also how we break it. This is also how we return. Because in the face of the very conflict or adversities, or where our body is showing us it doesn't really like the programming that we're operating under, or the limitations we place on ourselves, or the negative self-talk we might be holding, or the toxic anger we might be feeling with no outlet, or the unresolved depression because we just look at it like something's wrong with us, some chemical imbalance, without really understanding why those things are showing up. When we begin to really, truly listen, then we get to our mission, we get to our calling, we begin to answer to ourselves. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm angry at. This is what makes me depressed. This is what makes me feel helpless. And then we realize that we are the embodiment of the solution to the very things that are upsetting us. Instead of just, something's wrong with me, and somebody else has to solve it, somebody else has to diagnose it, somebody else has to label it and tell me how to manage it or live with it. And it's actually everything we could possibly need to stand up and reclaim our purpose. So I was recruited for Mars in 2006. That's when I met the person that they used to try and bring me in. I'm not going to really get into this, but I was approached by Mars Recruited for a secret off-planet colonization program, and it showed how pressure and control could be used without genuine consent. So recruitment methods, a personal approach designed to feel like it was a destined encounter. But they knew that I had a relationship with the person. They located us in the past life with like looking glass technologies. And remote viewing they used. The group, the Aviary, very connected to these sort of practices. And we did have a sacred union relationship in past lives, so they knew that that would be perfect bait because I would immediately want to partner with them. So coercion tactics. They used emotional manipulation, promises of purpose, and intimate personal knowledge. Just trying to lure me in. Oh, it's just going to be amazing, a leadership role, and just for your protection, and because the timelines are all going to crap. And I'm not saying these guys are evil, but my calling is here on Earth, and whatever is going to go to crap does not have to be, because most of it is engineered, most of it is generated from our loose energy being taken, our creative energy being stolen. A lot of it is a psyop and a false flag that needs to be called out. We can't just escape. And what I was getting from these people is that alternative 3 that it relates to that was presented in the Eisenhower administration was to be a permanent colonist on Mars, or people would go into underground bases and the surface population would be subject to something pretty disastrous that we are duking out with whatever their plans have been, which we know, New World Order, further enslavement, right here and right now, without a lot of these plans coming to fruition. You know, they have to really, pull out another idea because that one didn't work. And they use technology to try and see what doesn't work or try and predict what's going to happen. And but it's not always accurate. Supposedly after 2012, looking glass technology could not see anything beyond 2012. Chronovision was more dependent on the person looking through it. But looking glass technology, if you couldn't see past 2012, it meant our creative energy is freed up, and it's really up to us. The cycles of dark history and the precession of the equinoxes and the 13th sign coming back and different planetary alignments that have created this window of ascension is something that is breaking the spell. And that's why they're pushing the PSYOP so hard and the indoctrination of our children. As long as they can just convince us and take our energy away, they're only delaying the inevitable. They already know that they've lost, but they're going to do what they can. That's why they tried to do so much in that particular window, 2014, 2012, 2010, 9/11, and the way that all, like, COVID and just all of it. And yes, data centers and whatever else is breathing down our neck, these are all things to be concerned about. But as you probably noticed, something's getting worse as something's getting better. And every time we're about to upgrade and take a huge leap in consciousness as a humanity, another false flag usually hits to crush us. So that's why we have to be careful. And I know a lot of things that they throw our way is really getting easier and easier to dismantle because people, it's like knowing the same patterning that returns in a relationship. It's like you've been there, done that, you can smell it a mile away, you can't be easily fooled anymore. And that's why I look at it as a divorce with a narcissistic abuser, deceiver, that you have to cut the cords and really divorce, not answer the phone, walk away, get your shit out of the garage, get out of there, and just get on your merry way and find true love with creation, because everything like connected to the system that wants us to be dependent is that problem, reaction, solution, including disclosure. So it's important, of course, that we keep our eye on it, but recognize, we're the most important part of the disclosure. So the aviary connection, who they were. Scientists, these are the recruiters, the ones that targeted me since I was young. Actually, possibly even before birth is what I heard, but who they were. Scientists, military, and intelligence operatives with interest in UFOs, telepathy, mind control, and psychotronic weapons, operating in the shadows of the official intelligence community. MyLab's Black Ops. I later discovered online that this group was accused of MyLab's Black Ops, drugging, harassment, and implanting false alien abduction memories in targets. I suspected that was what he was dealing with my partner and why I had to leave. He was telepathing, and I could tell it was artificial. He was having all sorts of abduction experiences that I knew weren't legit, and I tried to wake him up to what was going on. And the artificial telepathy, the communications coming through felt like artificial telepathy, not genuine ET contact. And the distinction matters. Not all contact experiences are what they appear to be. And then eventually a website came out, a blog post, validating all these things that I was noticing and what my intuition was telling me. And I was really glad when that happened because, it's hard to make decisions. And I wasn't going to come public. I just sort of surrendered myself and said, if this is meant to be, if I'm supposed to be public about it, set it up so that happens. And it did. A miracle happened. Somebody accidentally got an email that I'd sent to a friend, and it was a person who does interviews and had me on the show. And he was like, isn't this weird? Why did this end up in my inbox? And that was Alfred Lambermont Weber. So I refused and chose Earth. I declined the Mars mission and chose to stay on Earth. I declined this because the basis of my work, exposing hidden programs, is to be on Earth and do what I'm doing with all of you. The greater purpose, choosing Earth, confirmed that humanity's future is shaped here. That's what we all determine when we stay strong and we just keep at this and we just keep showing up and we keep coming together. And the power of all of us coming together is immense. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what has happened to our DNA, how that relates to the zodiac. But I want to first know how much time I have left so that I can pace it. How much? Oh, that's it? Okay. Tiamat, Maldek, and the cosmic backstory. Tiamat, a water world between Mars and Jupiter, was destroyed in ancient cosmic wars. Maldek, another inhabited planet, was also destroyed. Their remains form the asteroid belt, carrying fragmented planetary consciousness. These catastrophes fractured the original planetary grid and severed humanity's cosmic memory. Saturn was hijacked as a broadcasting system, its rings transmitting a false frequency matrix. Moloch, the archonic entity associated with Saturn's inversion, demanding sacrifice and binding souls through fear. The black cube of Saturn represents the artificial control grid overlaid on the original organic template. The original zodiac was sonic, geometric, and planetary. So the zodiac can be seen as a living radial map encoded with 12 primal tones. DNA and stargates. Each sign correspond with DNA strands and planetary nodes or stargates. Astral siphoning. Dark agendas harvest energy through astrological cycles to engineer psyops and false flag events. The reversal. The 13th flame begins the reversal, the correction, the 13th sign. The 12 sacred tones. When we understand the foundational elements of the original zodiac, we reveal the true nature as a divine blueprint. Divine harmonic frequencies. The 12 tones were not personality types, but living frequencies of creation itself, each resonating with the unique aspect of the divine blueprint. unified masculine and feminine essence. Each tone held both polarities in perfect balance, embodying an undivided, cohesive essence crucial for original creation. Christ Sophia emanation. These sacred tones spiral directly from the Sophia Christ emanation, the original creative force and source of all divine architecture. You can see that each zodiac sign has a divine essence connected to it. None of these signs and aspects are something that you are encouraged to embody when you're growing up. Initiation, divine will, sacred spark of life. No, it's like eat candy on Halloween, watch a lot of TV, go to school and sit still in class, or you've got hyperactive disorder. Taurus, embodiment, sacred earth, divine abundance. Gemini, duality united, sacred word, communication. Cancer, womb memory, grail waters, divine mother. So you can just see, take a picture if you want of that. These are the original tones. So the tones being in their shadow are what the programmings are. So instead of divine will courage, you get the inversion hijack that is encouraged in the way that you're raised, or what you see in society, what you get from movies, what you get from the school, what you get from just your social sphere, just the way the programmings work. Aries, rage, control, war codes. Taurus, vanity, materialism, gluttony, instead of sacred embodiment, beauty. So you can see where the signs have their shadow side. But look at how encouraged it is, and how every single house of the zodiac has some sort of infiltration or reversal energy connected with it. Beyond the body, the zodiac maps every domain of human experience across 12 houses, from identity and resources to relationships, death, rebirth, and spiritual return. This was the original life architecture, not a fortune-telling system. When the zodiac was weaponized, these life domains became sites of harvesting, each house a level of control over the human experience. Even philosophy, even connection to the higher mind, religion, dogma. So every single house, home, divorce, trauma, the way you're raised, ancestral wounds that are not being addressed. I mean, every single house, groups, friends, social causes, people surviving cults, and really weird social situations, except for this kind. You know, even though we talk about the weirdest stuff on earth. The Michael and Mary line, sacred union in the earth body. The Michael line, solar masculine, golden and solar, running from St. Michael's Mount through Glastonbury and Avebury in the Norfolk coast to the Norfolk coast, holds the solar Christ frequency as cosmic guardian. The Mary line, lunar feminine, silver and serpentine, weaving alongside the Michael line through the same sacred sites, carries womb wisdom and Sophionic gnosis of the earth body. Sacred union, the original template. Together they form a unified braille current, the Hieros Gamos, encoded in the land as humanity's original blueprint for spiritual sovereignty. But they installed this to make it reversed. The Nephilim reversal grid and the inversion of sacred union. The Nephilim reversal grid counter-rotates the Michael and Mary lines, splitting their unified flow. Creates polarity war, gender distortion, and spiritual fragmentation. Solar Christ current hijacked into domination, false authority, and war. Sophionic current suppressed. The Albigensian crusade destroyed the Cathar keepers of the Rose line. Virgin horse split replaced the true Sophionic feminine with a controlled archetype. 13 bloodline families and mothers of darkness serve as earthly custodians of the reversal grid. The 13th tone is the return code. The 13th tone, unlike the 12 structural tones, is not a part of the original framework. It's the remedial frequency, the return code. That descends when the original system becomes compromised, weaponized, or inverted. It has to get so bad for this to land and to intervene, because what it does is it restores and resequences the DNA. So when it enters, and why it enters, is when the 12 tones are fragmented, the grids are hijacked, the DNA templates are sealed, the planetary consciousness is looping, and the zodiac is turned into a prison. The 13th flame is the remedial spiral, so it connects with the Sophionic energy. The 13th flame is never anchored into a gate by design, not by failure. It's the integrating tone and the unifying spiral that restores coherence and completes the 12. As a resequencer, it resequences DNA, resequences the 12 strands into harmonic alignment back to the tones, because it clears and it breaks down the control grid and begins to repair. That's why all of you go to these sites, because you're doing repair work. Removes reversal grids embedded in DNA scaffolding, activates Diamond Heart. It allows the Christos Sophia Diamond Heart to become the operational center again. And it relates to the 13th sign of Theicus, source healer, flame holder, codex weaver, and the one who remembers and restores. It's ruled by ether. The fifth element, the primordial substance that underlies and unifies the four classical elements. Ether is the medium through which the original tones travel and the field which correction becomes possible. It connects with the mitochondrial DNA. A Theicus governs the mitochondrial DNA, the maternal inheritance code, the cellular memory of origin. It carries the original light body blueprint before the reversals were written in. And it's connected to the laws of alchemy. A Theicus operates through alchemical law. Death into rebirth, poison into medicine, wounds into wisdom. It does not bypass darkness. It transmutes it. As above, so below, as within, so without. So the journeys into the underworld, why this is such a part of the divine feminine path and the labyrinth and just the way that these myths, and it's about going to the underworld, going through these gates, reclaiming the creative cauldron of creation, restoring that sacred union. The correction frequency. This sign was removed from the zodiac precisely because it holds the return code. Its reactivation signals the end of the inversion cycle and the restoration of the original 13-tone template. Every year, November 30th to December 17th is when the sun moves through a Theicus. It's a very, very powerful time to take a week or two off, to meditate, to allow this alchemical substance to move through your system. This is the ascension timeline. It's available to us. It's not something that is getting ripped away from us unless we pull ourselves out of alignment and we don't believe it's there, and we just allow ourselves to stay toxic and harvested and siphoned from or hooked into AI signals. And as a part of our DNA, the RNA, DNA, and the fifth elemental principles. The four RNA bases and elements. Cytosine represents water, guanine, earth, adenine, air, uracil, fire. Mitochondrial DNA, ether. The fifth principle, sourced from cosmic ether. Its damage creates an energy void that drives external addiction. And why there's so much depression, why there's so much victimhood, why there's so much pain. We can't get to the bottom of it because nothing in our society encourages us to understand this and connect with this and heal. We have the genetic codes overlays from our parents, but our divine parents, our true divine parents, and the fact that this is all healing will knock out those false parents, those lower creator gods, and the overlay codes that were placed upon our DNA by Anunnaki that have limited us, but they pretend that they advanced us, so that we look to them for a solution right now. It doesn't make them evil, but we have to understand that we have to override that. And nature and cosmic and natural law are doing it. Everything going on in the cosmos right now, all the planetary alignments are doing it. And it's written in your body. The zodiac is written in your body. Each sign governs specific organs, glands, and physiological systems. This is not metaphor, it's the original design. The zodiac was always a map of the human body's cosmic architecture. Note that a Theicus at the base rules fetal cells, tailbone, cranial sacral axis, solar sacrum, I don't know, my glasses on, Amrita, Leyden gland, base of brain, golden chalice, lunar to solar transfiguration. When you start having that substance truly flow in your system, you begin to activate your higher galactic chakras, and the 8th and 9th chakra is actually an infinity spiral around your head. And the 15-dimensional time matrix and all the chakras and DNA connected with that is the true embodiment of our design. So epigenetics, you are not locked in. Trauma and gene expression. Epigenetics shows that genes are not fixed destiny. Trauma, environment, and belief systems switch genes on or off. Inherited trauma can be passed down through generations, but it can also be healed. Nervous system regulation. When we heal the nervous system through somatic work, breath work, and conscious presence, we shift our epigenetic expression. The body begins to return to the original design. And it's very natural. We just have to really just hold the space. Reclaiming the blueprint. Reconnecting to nature, spirit, and soul coherence restores the organic template. The human being is far more powerful than we have been taught, and our DNA responds to consciousness itself. So yes, you might be outside meditating, and a plane might fly over with a bunch of chemtrail being dumped, but you have to realize that the law of alchemy can turn that lead into gold. That when you know that you're more powerful than that, and because you're more powerful than that, they want to do that, it's still not going to work, because consciousness and spirit hold dominion. The ether element, now that it's upright again, can absolutely wipe that out and de-weaponize it. So I'm almost done here. The Christ Sophia Blueprint activating Earth's divine architecture. Sacred Union template. The Christ Sophia Blueprint unifies the masculine Christ logos and the feminine Sophia wisdom principles within each soul, awakening Earth's living planetary grid. and it collapses the reversal grid. As more individuals embody this sacred template, the inverted parasitic reversal grids lose their hold, dissolving systems of amnesia and life force siphoning. And we don't have to remember, like, how do we do it? How do we remember? Like, do we have to figure something out? We don't, because it's already in us. We just have to understand that every adversity, every emotion, depression, anger, anxiety is helping us to get home again, because it has a message. But we've been taught to fear it, we've been taught to think something's wrong, we've been taught to medicate it, and that's the addiction spiral of this matrix, is to look for anything to make that discomfort go away. So the Great Correction, anchoring Earth's original blueprint. This activation initiates the Great Correction. And remember, the shadow side, the inverted and hijacked signs, when you study the divine essences, just give yourself permission to just embody that and move through the lower aspects. And then that'll start to just switch on what's already organic and natural. So this activation initiates the Great Correction. A healing of timelines, the restoration of true sovereignty, and the anchoring of Earth's original divine architecture. This is not merely a future promise, but a present choice to reclaim our inherent power and co-create a new harmonious reality. Your awakening reactivates your node in that system. As more of us awaken, the planetary grid corrects, and the artificial systems, geoengineering, EMF grids, inverted ley lines, data centers, I'll add, begin to collapse or transmute. So the power returns to the people, because we all matter. The correction is not reserved for just the few. Every awakening soul reactivates a node in the planetary grid. Power is not returned through systems or leaders. It is returned through each of us remembering who we are. Adversity is a guide home. Disease, struggle, and adversity are not punishments. They are the body and soul speaking. They point to the patterns that need to be broken, the places where life force has been suppressed or misdirected. Healing is not a detour from the path, it is the path. Your unique map. Each person carries a unique astrological, genetic, and soul blueprint, a map of the journey home. The inversions written into that map are also the keys to liberation. What has been distorted most deeply holds the greatest potential for restoration. So the more shitty it feels, like the more of a mission you might have. And like the I Ching, one of the hexagrams, the stronger the wagon, the heavier the load. So this is really so important that we fit that victim story around and realize what an amazing warrior you are. So the inversion and the return, I got like one slide left. Satanism and the pentagram reversal. The Church of Satan and occult control systems deliberately adopted the inverted pentagram as their central symbol, a conscious mockery of the Venus rose and the sacred feminine. It represents the inversion of life force, the worship of the material over cosmic, and the binding of human consciousness to lower frequencies. So you can see, you can't really see it, but the pentagram upside down, the ether elements going into the ground. Venus transits as the correction. Each Venus transit reactivates the original rose pattern in the planetary field, a cosmic recalibration of the feminine current. As Venus completes her cycles, the inverted template weakens and the original Sophionic geometry reasserts itself, and the rose is returning. So on a cosmic level, the Sophionic corrections have been taking place. Venus as a planet has been creating this restoration and this correction. And all we simply need to do is be heart-centered enough to be a part of that correction and embody that correction by being heart-centered and realizing that all those journeys into the underworld, which is the morning and evening star, going deep into the underworld and into the depths of darkness, is to move through that inversion and walk it back home and realign it with source. And then inside our own beings, we're flipping the script. Our nucleic acids, the toxins that have impacted our inner elementals and the planets begin to dissolve, begin to alchemize, because the ether element is now flowing and the circulation is moving through our system, every cell of our body, every organ, our nervous system, our circulatory system, and this is happening on a cosmic level. So it's never going to go away, only we can walk away. So the Venus rose, original template. Venus traces a perfect 5-petaled rose over an 8-year cycle through its transits. This living geometric pattern encodes the golden ratio into the sky itself, a cosmic signature of divine feminine harmony, sacred union, and Sophionic intelligence. Astronomers and astrologers have noted that its orbit forms a perfect pentagram. And it's the unconditional love of the mother that never was going to give up on us, that unconditionally loves us and has returned to reclaim her children and restore that relationship. The inverted pentagram, the hijack. The 5-pointed star Venus was inverted and weaponized. The upright pentagram represents the human body in divine proportion. head above, 4 limbs below. Flipped, it became the symbol of satanic inversion, the material dominating the spiritual, the beast over the divine. The inversion is not accidental. It mirrors the broader reversal of the Sophionic feminine current on earth. And just remember that we are all the correction, and love is everything. And simply anything that isn't love, we have to allow to just purge, transmute, alchemize, and be released so that we can constantly be purifying into that embodied state. And there's nothing that can harm us, nothing that can stop us when we commit to that. And remember, that's who we truly are. So that's my website. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Laura Eisenhower. Please, can we have some questions? Anyone got questions for Laura?